places like that. Even further if you come from Huddersfield on the megabus this morning, as John here did. Purpose of today is we're having a look at Big Society 1 year on. Just a quick introduction. My name is Julian Dobson. I'm one of the co-founders of the Our Society Network, along with John over here, David, Sophie with the camera, Emma, who is around somewhere, Dave, and have we got everyone else? Paul?
I'm down here somewhere.
Paul's over there. Yeah, so I think that's most of us. There's a couple of others who can't be here today. And I'll tell you a little bit about the Our Society Network and what we're here for in a second. With me we have Will Horwitz from Community Links, Jonathan Rosenberg from Wedge, and just like to say thank you to Wedge, Walters and Nelpin Community Homes for hosting us today, for making this venue and the refreshments available. Wedge is a great example of what Big Society could be, and Jonathan's going to say a bit about that in a few minutes. Jess Steele from Locality, who's going to be, Locality is running the Community Organisers programme, so we're going to have a quick look at what that might involve. Toby Bloom from Urban Forum, and Paul Webster from NAVCA is going to say a few words, and finally we're going to have some reflections from Nick Dennis. Where's Nick? Over there, from Platform 10 blog. And we've got a good variety of people here, some who've been quite closely involved in developing the Big Society ideas with or near to government, some who have been observers from the outside and have critiqued and been involved in checking those Big Society ideas against reality for the last year or so. And that really is where the Our Society Network came about. It came about a year ago. Last July, we suggested the idea of a big society in the north because there was slightly tongue-in-cheek, and the idea was that a government vision of society and a government vision of what communities should be was one version of a story, but actually Big Society might have been the government's story, but Our Society is our story. So Big Society in the north came from an understanding that while the government had a vision for society, that vision was likely to be undermined by the cuts that are taking place at the moment and that are predicted from the moment that the coalition government took power, and in fact would have happened to a large extent under a Labour government as well. Don't forget that. That given that context, you need a view of society that comes from those who are involved at community level with grassroots organisations, and that connects with what is actually happening to people on the ground. And we felt that that was not coming from the government's vision of Big Society. So what we're doing today is saying, okay, how far has government come with its vision? How much does it meet the aspirations of communities? And what could it do better? How can you test the limits of what the government is doing? And how can we push government to a vision of Big Society that is more in tune with communities? So if you're following this on Twitter or contributing on Twitter, the hashtag is BigCheck. Sadly, there are no big checks for us as Our Society Network, but given the absence of big checks from government, it's important for us to create a big check for government. So this is about moving from the debate about what is big society, what does it all mean, to trying to get something practical about what do we want it to be. What does it mean within the communities where we work or that we're involved in. So first point, very briefly, Big Society is happening, but it's not happening in the way that government expected it to. It's happening with up to 500,000 people marching through London saying we don't want the version of Big Society that involves the removal of a lot of the infrastructure that supports communities and supports community activity. It's happening with people critiquing what's going on in government. And it's happening with people getting together and starting to do stuff, which in a way, it's what government is looking for anyway. But it's, the point about the big society that we're starting to see emerging is that it's happening to an agenda that is coming from communities, and that's the agenda that we want to pursue and we want to develop. Our society network, we're about constructive engagement in this debate. You know, it's very easy to stand on the sidelines and throw bricks and say, you know, government's got it wrong, it needs to do something different. We're about saying things have to change anyway because of the situation that we find ourselves in. How can we make it work? How can we make things work in a way that supports communities rather than undermines them? We strongly believe that government shouldn't and can't impose its own vision of society on us. You know, it's like having an organ transplant, that if it's not part of the body, it will be rejected. And I think what we're seeing with the government's vision for big society is that the body is rejecting it to a large extent. And we need to find a way of creating something that communities will accept and work with. We do need to think differently, not just because the cuts are coming anyway, but because of bigger changes that are on the way in terms of the demographic change in our population is going to create greater demands for social care, for self-help, for social services. Climate change and the need for environmental sustainability is going to completely change the way that we think about the world that we live in and the kind of aspirations that we have. And so there is an issue about what is the role of the state, what is the role of the civil society in that context. So we believe that empowerment is about economic change as well as social change. It's not just about people filling in for the job that the state used to do, but it has to be about changing the basis of economic power within communities. And so we think that a society that works, a big society that works, has to be one that can critique big business and can critique vested interests. And so we want to see that happening, and that's one of the ideas that we want to explore today. We also see a role for something that can hold the government's vision of big society to account and be a bit of a self-forming and self-running watchdog for big society. You know, if government wants to sell a particular vision of society to us, then we need to be able to say, how well is it working, what is succeeding, what is not, and how do we want it to develop. So that's what we've been doing with our society. We've been asking questions of initiatives like Your Square Mile. We've been involved in the big lotteries, People Powered Change initiative, questioning Peter Wanness as their chief executive and feeding that back to our society members and to a wider network. And that is a process that will continue. And what we're doing today is just creating a chance for people to get together and say, what is working in big society? What could work better? And where do we want it to go? So that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over to